Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. As we head towards warmer weather, and this is our second show of the sixth season, we get a chance to spend some time, and from now on, we'll be able to put out a regular show as we get through the lacrosse season and finish of the ski season. So we look forward to a great summer, and I can't wait for get that moving. We get our boat in the water May 2nd. Hopefully, it'll be one of the better summers. On this show, we have a first opportunity to talk to Charlie Enright, the ocean winner, first American ocean winner last year, who's now the U.S. CEO for U.S. Sailing. Charlie talked to us from Bristol yesterday. We had one of the first interviews with Charlie. We were kind of speculated last week that he might be the new CEO, and they were nice enough that we kept our mouth shut for 4 days. They gave us an interview. If you remember, we had a chance to talk to Charlie last year from Akatawa during one of the 52 practices, and I think you're going to find out that he's a real good pick for overseeing U.S. Sailing, because as a Brown graduate with a finance and accounting background, and then certainly his international reputation as a wide open ocean racer, I think it'll be a great combination. And with the age of being 40, gets to be with his family. More importantly, he gets to go home. Grandfather built cruising boats back in Bristol, so I think it's a great choice. And when you hear the interview, we're going to talk about U.S. Sailing, and I think it'll be enlightening and hopefully fun to listen to. The second part of the show, we're going to bring you some snips and bits of a show I did for North Cape down in the LaSalle area as part of the Winter DRYA Winter Speaker Series. And unfortunately, when we broadcast it, or more importantly, when we tried to video it, we had a little problem with sound. So we're going to give you some bits and pieces of what we did. A little bit different than many of the shows. A lot of the DRYA shows were last couple of weeks ago, Dave Perry on rules. We try to take some snippets from some real high-powered sailors, and then a little bit of an anecdote about what we were talking about, and then showing the anecdote in the words of those kinds of guys like Terry Hutchinson. And Charlie Enright will be as part of that process. A couple other noted sailors, and I think you'll enjoy that part. We're going to bring it in two parts to give you an idea of what we were trying to do, and hopefully that'll be fun. So up next is new U.S. Sailing CEO Charlie Enright. We'll be back in a second.
Smiles are powerful. They spread joy, laughter, and hope. But not everyone gets a fair chance at a smile. Every 3 minutes, a baby is born with a cleft, making it difficult to talk, hear, eat, and even breathe. In America, most children with clefts receive immediate care, but others around the world may never have access to the surgery they need to thrive. Smile Train is changing that. As the world's largest cleft charity, our sustainable model has sponsored more than 1.5 million smiles. We offer training and financial support to local medical professionals so they can provide life-changing surgery and other essential services at no cost to families.
It's wonderful to see these children, to hear the difference that we make. And for me, being born with a cleft lip and palate, knowing what they went through is so life-changing for me. They're not just helping a child, but they're helping a family, a community.
Help us change the world one smile at a time.
Welcome back. We're chatting with the new U.S. Sailing CEO, Charlie Enright. And Charlie, you were named the new CEO on Monday. First of all, congratulations for the post. You're kind of going home to Rhode Island, where you were born and raised. So, any thoughts on the new position?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. Like you said, U.S. Sailing is based in Bristol, Rhode Island, a town that I spent the first, 36 years of my life, and live 10 minutes from there now. The more I get engaged in the process, the more, I got excited about the prospect of, being able to help the organization. And, there's still a lot that I don't know, that's for sure. It seemed like the process took a while, but once it got to the pointy end, it happened pretty quick. So I think officially May 1st will be the beginning of things, but just kind of the way that I operate. Already engaging with the community, the board, some of the other stakeholders. So just trying to figure out where we are and where we're going.
I know it's going to take a while to get your feet wet and you actually get down and doing the mechanical part of the job. But I think one of the good things that I think is making folks happy is you have both an international sailing background and certainly a degree of finance and accounting from Brown. So you've kind
Mhm.
of, nipped two things in one bud, so to speak, and that's going to give you that opportunity. I'm guessing you're going to take at least 6 months to look around and see exactly what the landscape looks like. But what do you see short term as maybe one of the top two or three priorities?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first, call it 100 days in office, if you will, are really about listening and kind of figuring out, like I said before, kind of where we are, and that will help determine kind of where we're headed. I think the priorities are, um, first and foremost, restoring the reputation of the organization, which, in some people's eyes hasn't been where it needs to be
Right.
over the last couple of years. I think and hopefully with that, fundraising becomes a important part of certainly my job moving forward. I think Alan left in August, so I think there's been a lot of uncertainty with the staff, particularly here in Bristol locally. So I think there'll be a bit of a transition period for me. I had some commitments on my calendar, and I will continue to honor those. Because I believe it's the right thing to do. So, I'm not going to be in the office all day, every day from day one. But, certainly come September when things, slow down, I'll be there every day and look forward to that, stability, helping to create that culture here locally in Bristol. Um, but I do think it's important that, in this post moving forward, I continue to do some sailing to be relevant, to be out there, to kind of have a finger on the pulse and know what's going on. So, will it be to the level that I've done in the past? Probably not. But I think it's important. I mean, like I've told a number of people at this stage, like if I don't actually get to go sailing, I'm not going to be the type of person that you want in the office anyway. So, we'll go from there.
Something like the ocean race, is that really off the table since it takes such a long time? Being a CEO
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
I would think,
yeah.
yeah.
That's all. Yeah,
There's really sort of three factions within U.S. sailing in terms of voices and vocal opportunity. You have a racing community, you certainly have the cruising community, then you have the ancillary business of sailing. Does any of those take priority over the other? Because sometimes the racing community thinks it's a little more important because obviously you're dealing with the Olympics and other kinds of races. Is there one that gets more attention, or is it sort of I got to sort of float this boat all in the same water?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not sure. Certainly, the Olympics gets a lot of attention. At least from the public and maybe from the communication side of things. Maybe people naturally gravitate toward that. Um, but I think that's natural if you not just with sailing, but if you look at how many people watch the Summer and Winter Olympics, it's a ton. So people obviously care about it, even outside this sport. Um, but we'll just have to kind of see how it works out. I mean, U.S. Sailing's job is to grow the sport, to grow the membership, to grow the base, to make sure that it's accessible, to people that don't come from a sailing background. So it has a lot of jobs, and we got to figure out which ones we're going to prioritize, and got to figure out what stuff we're doing well, and what stuff maybe we're not doing well, and needs to either be improved or passed along to someone else, or it'll be what it'll be. But like I said before, I have no preconceived notions. It's day zero. We'll just kind of go in there and see how it's working, and meet the good people that do a lot of the good work, and like I said, just go from there.
Appreciate the honest answer of just sort of like you said, I'm not sure in some cases. That's refreshing in a world where every CEO has got an answer for every question. I think that's remarkable and certainly a testament to your honesty. 35,000 members, I would think retention would have to be one of those factors because it has slipped over the last, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. And be able to build that base also helps in so many other areas. I got to believe that you're going to be working with membership at least initially to look at the short-term landscape.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no excuse. We're a country of 330 million people, and we have 35,000 members of U.S. sailing. I mean, you look at the UK, which is kind of the gold standard. I mean, they got 35, or excuse me, 65 million people and over 100,000 members, we believe that there's, over 4 million sailors in this country. So we have a lot of work to do. I think some of that is, restoring the reputation of the organization. I think some of it is showing value for membership, making sure people know what they're getting. I said it in an interview with Dave Reed, but it can't feel like a tax. You know,
Right.
uh, we have to have people joining because they want to join and they see the benefits. I think the benefit package of membership could be a bit more robust than maybe it is today. Um, it's not a ton of money. That said, you should feel like you are getting something for it. So that's what it's all about. It's about value.
Talking to Richard Jepson last year, he said one of the biggest complaints from membership was that it didn't feel like they were getting their money's worth on that membership. You get a rule book, and it was sort of like, there you go, get a sticker for the back of your car. So providing that, I think, becomes an important part.
Yeah, I mean,
Using,
you look at organizations like AAA. I mean, people join AAA all the time. When was the last time someone had a car towed?
yeah,
You do it for the perks. You do it for the benefits. Here in the Northeast, we look at season passes for ski mountains and everything that comes along with that, and just the partnerships and the deals. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the expansion of membership.
using a name out of your past, your 11th hour background and
Mhm.
running that syndicate and doing that, that's got to be a great, I would think, a great help in sort of looking at the business side of things because that was a sailing racing syndicate, but you also had all of the business, the daily business things that had to go to it. So that's got to be, I think, would be a pretty good experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's not too dissimilar in terms of number of people and the amount of dollars and cents kind of flowing through on an annual basis. You know, I, I I like to consider myself decently self-aware. I have my strengths and I have my weaknesses, and I know that it takes a strong team to succeed, and that part is definitely um, analogous to what we've done in Ocean Races past. But certainly what we did before was entrepreneurial in nature, and this is definitely a little bit more structured. But I look forward to learning new skills and yeah, taking on what's going to be an awesome challenge because everything that's fun and worth doing is difficult, and I'm looking forward to it.
Have you thought about what the best part of this is? Is there something you're looking forward to? So everybody always asks, what's the worst part of the job? I hate to ask that question because that'll come when you know some things. But as you're taking this, as you're going through it, talking with your family, what sort of perks up your ears?
Well, I mean, it's funny you bring up my family, but hopefully I'll be seeing a little bit more of them. That's definitely part of it. But I'm a team guy. I feel like the 40 some odd employees that are working here in Bristol, represent a good opportunity to build a cohesive team, and that's kind of what it takes to accomplish goals. So I'm looking forward to that kind of being in and around the group. And then beyond that, also being in and around the membership. I mean, I span um, a wide range of the sport. Working with the offshore office, my kids are into junior sailing and the racing side of things, and just across. My wife's a teacher; she's very into education and some of the STEM programming that U.S. Sailing offers. So. I feel like I touch a lot of different aspects of the sailing community, and by default, a bunch of different departments within U.S. Sailing. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to just kind of immersing myself and figuring out how it's all going and where we can go from here.
Your family's been there a long time. I think your grandfather built boats, if I'm not mistaken, cruising boats back in that area. So you understand the area. You've been there your whole life. Does that give you a bit of an advantage?
Maybe. Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about this. I don't think you really get to know someone over email. I think you barely get to know them in an office environment. I think when you really get to know people, you're kind of out in the wild, and Bristol's a pretty cool place to explore. So I think it'd be great to get some of the staff out on the water, maybe doing some beer can racing at the Bristol Yacht Club. Bristol's got a lot of awesome things to offer. So look forward to exploring those with the group, as we kind of move forward here. But, my grandfather was a boat builder in Bristol, Rhode Island. He kind of got me into this whole mess. And it's cool to be kind of, I guess, filling a role in the industry in a town that, I grew up in and kind of am very familiar with and have some history with.
I like the idea, sort of like a coach. You're talking about beer can racing, sort of building culture within culture. Taking the opportunity to, you expect everybody to be a certain way, but it's a lot easier to break bread with folks that you like, and at least to have some respect for than somebody who sits across from an office who doesn't, and that's a big thing in the business world, certainly. Is there any, last question, is there any sort of in the back of your mind, is there any sort of projects that you're thinking about, or is there something that maybe take precedence that sort of I know you have a landscape, you've got to cover everything equally, but there's something that you think you can bring to the table that might be unique or innovative or new?
Um, just what kind of pops to mind is, kind of to the extent I can. And, I've said this before, but I know I don't come from an Olympic background. Like in some ways, I know enough to be dangerous. But I think to kind of help smooth out that landscape would be a priority of mine, to the extent that, I can help and I'm able to do that. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and jump in. But, I think since the announcement, I've got a lot of overwhelming support. So I think that's a good sign. But really, it's about it results. Talk is cheap. So, we'll see how that plays out. But it's definitely a priority. I'd say the restoration of relationships from the beginning.
When we talked last year at Mekatawa, you talked a lot about ocean sustainability based on the programs and around the world. I think coming around the Cape has got to be a little more difficult than dealing with a board, but nevertheless, do you see that the environmental part of the process is going to also be a part of the landscape for U.S. sailing?
Yeah, sure. I think right now it's a lot of that happens through the education department. But perhaps it's its own department later on. I mean, it just depends on what the membership wants, what the constituents want, what can be funded. But surely, over the last two campaigns at the very least, ocean health has been a big part of my life, and to the extent we can kind of bring it to where I'm headed, great. But at the same time, it's not about me. It's about the membership. So it's all kind of got to work.
Well, I think they picked an unbelievable choice, and we appreciate you spending a couple minutes here in the morning. So best of luck, and I'm sure our paths will cross. Charlie, it's really good to see you on top of an organization that needs some serious help. So thank you for your time.
Greg, I appreciate that, and maybe I'll see you in Macatawa.
Let's hope.
I'll never forget the day I nearly died. I was a young journalist with a great career, starting a family. The only way we found out I had any kind of heart issue was when I went into sudden death. My coworkers sprung into action. They've recently been trained in life-saving CPR protocols developed by the American Heart Association. They're the ones that kept me alive until the medics came. They did many tests on me in the hospital after my cardiac arrest and created a treatment plan, all with research from the American Heart Association. I think unless you are a heart disease patient, you may not know how much work the American Heart Association does behind the scenes to save your life. Since my cardiac arrest, I've had 2 more children. I've watched all 3 of my children grow into adulthood. I'm gonna cry now. Graduate from college, my daughter got married. I have grandchildren, and I'm still here.
Learn more about the American Heart Association's work at helpheart.org.
Welcome back. We wanted to take a couple minutes out and put a segment together of sailors and talking about anecdotes in their words of people that we've interviewed through the show. And I think it's been a pretty interesting concept. We did the last speaker series for DRYA down in North Cape. Dwayne Burgoyne was nice enough to invite us down there as part of the process. They had a lot of really good speakers this winter, and we were trying to hold up our end of it. When we recorded it, we had a problem with the audio, so I thought we'd bring you bits and pieces of that presentation. I think it's kind of cool to hear the words of those people who speak, especially as it related to a small anecdote. The first two you're going to get a chance to spend some time seeing. We asked Ken Reed, the great Ken Reed, what it was like to be a sailor and also be in the business. And he has a very interesting answer. And if you're not aware, which is like kind of the funny point, I asked him a little bit about what it takes to be a part of being a professional sailor. And he mentioned you certainly got to keep the boat captain and the boat's wife captain happy. And I didn't understand the connotation at the time. For those of you who know Ken's background, will take care of itself. For those of you who don't, you'll have to go look it up. It was explained to me, and I think it's a very insightful comment by Ken Reed. And right after that, Gary Jobson, I got a chance to ask Gary what was more important, winning an America's Cup or an Emmy. I think that's a pretty poignant fact, and those guys are up right now.
You go down the dock, and every pro sailor here, they've never been involved with a company. Never mind, they're their own person, as their company. I'm different. I have a day. I always say I got a day job and a day job. I get to do a little of both, and that certainly comes from learning how to run a team, and that's not easy. It's hard. Say yes to every ride you can, and then when you become a power player on the boat, that hopefully you make that boat more successful. You make the owner happy, you make the owner's wife be happy, the crew loves you. They're going to talk on the dock, and before you know it, the next cool boat's going to give you a call, the next cool boat, and before you know it, somebody's going to call you to do a transatlantic crossing. You just have to keep being yourself, being a professional, and just say yes to everything.
So I first met Ted Turner at the age of 22 in 1972, and I'd sailed in a regatta in Barrington, Rhode Island called the Interclass Solo Championship. You sailed a different boat each day over 3 days. I ended up losing by 1 point to Robbie Doyle. He was an All-American at Harvard. And at the trophy ceremony, Ted Turner came along and he put his arm around me and his arm around Doyle and said, "I don't know who the hell you guys are, but we're going to sail together." And so after college, I started racing with Ted, and so did Robbie. And I did 2 America's Cups with Turner and the Fastnet and everything else that Turner was doing. And that was a good run. And not only was the sailing good, but Turner said something to me right in the beginning. He said, "Look, you're going to help me sail better, and we're going to win some races, and I look for that. And in return, I'll help you with your business career. What do you want to do?" "Well, I teach sailing and write books." He said, "Good." Well, he became quite the advisor to me, which led eventually to ESPN, my long career there, and all the media I've done over the years. So have an advisor, the creator of CNN, Ted Turner, helping me with that sure paid off.
What's more rewarding, an America's Cup victory or an Emmy?
Well, for a sailor, the America's Cup is the top of this sport and pretty special. And I knew sailing in that day that life would be different after that moment. I do have a couple Emmys on my shelf over here. And when you win an Emmy in television, it's a nice reward because you've been recognized by your peers as doing something special. My Emmys came from the Olympic Games and the Volvo Ocean Race.
There were a number of bloopers that we ran, and some of them were good, some of them weren't. Some of them were just to show my stupidity. In introducing myself to Don Riley, the clip will take care of itself on the blooper end of it. In going out of Macatawa last year and having a chance to talk to Bob Hughes on Heartbreaker before a practice session before the 52 season, I was so concentrated on sitting on this big boat and interviewing Bob, I forgot to see the guys on the back of the boat who were relieving themselves, and that got us about 150 or so emails. And then while we were interviewing somebody, Connor Korgard, a couple of years ago, somebody ran a junior sailing boat, a junior sailing program I actually used to run right into the side of my boat. And it's not often, and while you're interviewing somebody, you see your boat get jammed by another smaller boat. And then we just thought that was kind of interesting. So take a look at that, and then we'll be back in a second after that.
I'm talking with Don. Oh my God.
Riley.
Wizards, so they bought Ikebana, which is a great 52, so they're there with Turner. They have a great crew on board. They'll be very formidable. And the other boat is Katana, which is this is a great story. The boat that won the Super Series championship.
And if that wasn't enough, you're going to get a chance, actually in here in a couple of seconds, you're going to get a chance to see a junior sailing boat at Crescent attack one of the boats in the harbor while we were doing the interview. And I say that is just somebody got off on the wrong tack. And when we looked up and we heard a bang, we found out that one of the 420s had crashed into the side of the boat. Interestingly enough, that was my boat. We're hoping that there's no problem with the boat, and certainly hopefully the kids are safe. But we've got it on film, so we thought we'd share that with you just as an opportunity to kind of have some fun. Hopefully that made you laugh. I'm not sure that we have to worry about the side of the boat at this point. We've checked it out. There's not too many scratches. But I've not actually had a boat attack seen on video while we're doing an interview with somebody else, but I thought it was kind of cute, kind of funny. So hopefully you enjoyed that. One of those poignant interviews that I think we had was with Terry Hutchinson as it related to an accident on an America's Cup boat down in New Zealand in 2021. We had a chance to interview Matt Cassidy, and we talked a little bit about the accident. You'll see all of the footage from that accident. It was a remarkable recovery by both the New Zealand participants and the folks putting on the race and all that were involved. Terry got spilled upside down and was not exactly sure what he was doing with oxygen. If you see those helmets and they've got oxygen for 6 minutes, it's a pretty catastrophic accident. One of the side points when we talked to Matt was it was amazing. There are 5 people from Harbor Springs who have actually had America's Cup experience. If you think of how small Harbor Springs is and realize the quality of the racers, but Matt walked through the premise of the accident, and then I had a chance to ask Terry. And the answer will take care of itself. But then the second part is when you don't press somebody, as a lot of people sometimes do in journalism, they keep asking the same questions twice. As a long-term journalist, I don't ask folks about their babies dying. It doesn't make sense to have those kinds of questions. But I did get a chance to ask him when he was 0-5 prior to this past America's Cup, what winning might look like to him. I think you'd be pretty surprised at the answer. And I think we got the answer because we didn't press on the front end of asking about the accident that was obviously pretty traumatic for him. And he's a guy who likes to look at it anyway. And we'll let that speak for itself.
No, I was on the chase boat. We were Alex Sinclair and I were on the chase boat as the rotation sailors, and we saw them capsize. And on the way up to the boat, we saw a piece of we thought was a fairing floating in the water. And so I went to pick it up, and as I reached in to pull it out, I turned it over, and it was blue. And the only blue on the boat was the hull. And we had one of the designers on the boat who started freaking out, saying, so we got on the radio because they didn't know they had a hole because the hole's on the leeward side of the boat. And so we started radioing that the boat was sinking and you guys got major issues. And obviously we quickly realized the extent when we tried to write it, and when it came up, it was below water or at water level.
The New Zealand fire departments and all of the folks that worked through that have to be given great credit, because it really was going to be a loss. I mean, a major loss.
Yeah, it would have been if it wasn't for those guys. if it wasn't for Team New Zealand was watching on the TV, and they immediately grabbed all their rescue equipment, their divers, and the most experienced guys for that situation, and came out. So we had our chase boat already tied up on one side, and they came over and tied up on the other. And then the fire department, the police department, I don't know how many crash pumps it would have been in the press before when it happened, but we had 15, 20 different crash pumps from all the teams. Everyone helped out, and it was kind of a whole industry situation. It wasn't just an American Magic situation. Everyone was involved, and it was kind of cool to see. We were just racing against Prada, and we had guys from Prada on our boat helping us save it. An hour later. So it's cool that the community, we're competitors, but we're also friends at the end of the day, and everyone chipped in to help us save that thing and make it to the race course another day.
So that viewers are watching, we should point out that there was a flip of the America's Cup boat in New Zealand during an America Cup race. Am I correct?
Yep.
There's a great video online if you want to go see it, to the point of and one of the things we should point out is that you were using sails. You weren't using wings like they're using now.
Yep. And
how long did it take? It didn't take very long. Did it take 24 to 48 hours to put the boat back together?
It was, a little bit longer than that. There was quite a bit of work to do. We had to, strip the boat out. The boats are extremely complicated with all the electronics and hydraulics and everything on the boat. So what took the longest was getting that section of hull built again. So our boat builders cut out we got it in the shed that night. And then, over the course of, say 4 days, 5 days, the hull was fixed. Team New Zealand was actually building that piece at their boat building facility. So it just kind of shows the camaraderie amongst the teams. Is our main competition was helping us build the piece that, got us back sailing. And then we got that together, and then we had to put all the electronics and everything back on the boat. So it was a monumental feat for the 7 days we had to get it from crash to back to sailing.
So the America's Cup has always been sort of at the back of the brain. It's just, that's been the stepping stone, right?
Back and the front, the entire brain.
Okay. You've been in 5 of them. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And at this point, you haven't had a chance to ring the bell for all kinds of reasons. Is there still that hunger to want to find the top of the mountain? I just briefly we had Matt Cassidy on last week, and he was on a support boat. You guys had a pretty catastrophic accident in 2020 in New Zealand. 21. Okay. Can you maybe walk through that? What's something like that's like? Because I don't think that happens very often.
I'm going to leave it in the past.
Okay, that's fine.
It's over with, and like I said, all these experiences you have to take forward and improve upon, and I'm confident that we've lived it.
Okay,
lessons have been learned, but at a certain point,
no, that's fine.
Need to move forward from it too.
And the absolute last question:
America's
Cup victory would mean to you what?
Ooh. Relief.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't really allow myself to think about it because it's an incredibly hard problem to solve.
Sometimes you don't know people as well as you think you do. Peter Eisner is going to explain, going to an Ivy League school and getting a meteorological degree, that a lot of folks didn't know that, but understanding weather from a collegiate and getting a degree in that discipline is pretty important. So you wonder why Peter's so good at certain things about sailing. I think he'll tell you why.
What's your educational background at Yale?
I majored in sailing. I did as much as I could, but we lived out at the Yale Sailing Center for 3 of our 4 years there. And but my focus of studies was meteorology. So I studied weather, and at Yale, it's not really a hands-on weather forecasting routine. I learned computational fluid dynamics, and it was all pretty math and physics oriented, but that was as close as I could get to sailing and still graduate with a degree.
You never saw yourself at Channel 4 News on Saturday night, 11 o'clock, right?
Absolutely, I did. I didn't think, I thought of it at the time, and it was always something that intrigued me. And then years later, when I started getting all this TV experience, when I covered the America's Cups for ESPN and other networks, I had all the skills and then some to be able to talk about the high pressure on the right and the low pressure on the left, and talk with those green boards, which is pretty hard to do. But somehow I've been able, luckily, to be able to go to work.
With your meteorological background, you think that gave you an advantage over some of the guys you competed against, especially in the bigger boats?
It's something that I've developed, and I would urge anybody who's into sailboat racing, understanding weather, or at least having a inquisitive mind about weather and looking at the sky and looking at the clouds, is very important in this day and age with this device right here. You can be pretty dangerous in terms of finding high resolution models and getting at least ideas of forecast, different takes on what might happen.
At the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, ending abuse is not just our job, it's our promise.
I want to thank Charlie Enright and all the folks who helped with this show. And I think Charlie's a great pick for the new director of U.S. Sailing, CEO. And I hope the retrospective, in their own words, was kind of fun. We'll bring you the second half featuring some really top level sailors. It kind of is fun for me to look at some of the people we've attracted to this show. We were going to put Charlie's conversation last year from Akatawa with the ocean and about ecology and environment. We'll do that next week, but we hopefully you enjoyed some of those tidbits from the back, and we'll have a chance to have that conversation with a variety of people. I also wanted you to notice that we're running 10 knot apparel commercials. There's no money involved, but if you know Susie and Christine, we want to give them a shout out because we're going to continue to run their commercials. They've got great apparel. They do such a good job, and we're working on some fundraisers for a couple things, and we'll hopefully bring that up in the next couple of weeks. But they're just terrific folks, and we're looking for their third commercial. So you get a chance to check out the 10 knot website. And for all the guys in back, this is Greg Norman. I'll see you next week.